because when you look at a face, naturally, you're going to look at the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. Those are the parts of the face that we really communicate with and identify with. But the thing is, if you guys think about facial structures, the eyes, nose, and the mouth don't have any structure in them at all. I mean, the eyes are round, squishy, wet things. The nose is cartilage. The lip is tissue. And so what I see a lot with portrait drawings is people get so seduced by the eyes, nose, and mouth, and they don't realize that actually that's a total trap. So don't fall into that. If you guys look at eyes, nose, and mouth, I mean, I know this is creepy, but you don't really capture a head if you start with the eyes, nose, and mouth. In fact, everything feels very floaty and disconnected. Really, you guys, the key to making a good portrait, it's really understanding the structure that surrounds the facial features, the stuff that's around the mouth, the form that is around the eyes. That matters way more in terms of getting a face to really make sense. So when people talk about, oh, I'm having so much trouble with the eyes, what I say to them is, look, you better take a look at your eye sockets, because it doesn't matter how amazing your eyes are if you don't have a proper eye socket. So that's really what you guys are aiming to do, is in the beginning of a drawing, you really want to establish the facial structure. And if you guys do a great job of really building that skull, when you go in to add the eyes, nose, and mouth, it should not be difficult. You should just plop them right in. It should not be challenging, because really, honestly, it's the structure part that is the most difficult thing to do. It's not glamorous. Of course, everybody likes to draw the eyes and the lips and stuff like that, but you got to put that aside in the beginning part of a portrait drawing. So actually, the drawing that I'm showing you guys on the left-hand side, this is how I start a portrait, okay? And I know a lot of people would look at that and be like, that doesn't look like anything. Well, that's sort of the whole point, is that you have to build a portrait like you would build a sculpture. Like, you wouldn't start sculpting eyelashes. You have to have a neck. You got to have shoulders. And so really, in my opinion, you should not be doing any facial features until you get to this stage of the drawing. This really has to come first. So you prioritize the facial structure. We have a comment here from Moon Sparks, who's saying, drawing cheeks is my favorite thing when starting. Well, cheeks are a good place to start because they are very much a structural part. And Seven Angelic is also saying eye sockets are so helpful to start a face. Yep, because all of these structures contextualize the facial features. So what I'm actually going to do now is show you guys a very quick clip of me starting a portrait. I'm going to talk while I'm showing you guys the video, because I think oftentimes a lot of people don't really see why you need to start so big. Like, a lot of people want to just get into the features, and I'm like, no, you got to get everything in place. So let's go in and take a look at this. And you guys can see it really is about massing in the form, okay? And for me, I just start with the biggest shape. I always put in the neck and shoulders. We're not going to talk about those today, but the neck and shoulders really contextualize what's happening in the face. And you'll notice how early the hair comes in. Like, a lot of people, they'll just do the face and they'll leave the hair for the last minute, but you can't do that. And I'll tell you guys why in a little bit. But look at how much gets done on the portrait before I even do facial features. I happen to like starting with the nose. I mean, it's up to you guys. I like the nose because it's in the middle. I sort of feel like if I start with the eye sockets, I'm working top down. So I like working with the nose and then pushing my way out and looking at things like the opening on the lip and then getting a little bit of an indication into the chin. So that's how I like to start a portrait. Really, really basic. Now, a lot of you might be wondering, okay, well, why are you bothering with the hair? Because a lot of people think, oh, well, the hair, I can do that later. Here's the thing, you guys, you really have to think about hair as a mass. And it is not something you guys can do until the very last minute. And by the way, we will do a stream at some point that's just about hair. So I'm not going to go super detailed, but I do want to say why it's important. For example, if you look at this image of Lena Waithe, I don't know how to say her name. Anyway, if you look at this photo, think about how much her hair has to do with the way she looks. Like if we look at this image on the right, if you take away her hair, she's such a different person. And so I think the thing to think about with hair, not just the physicality of it and it as an essential mass, but hair has a lot to do with people's identity. Like think about Cher, okay? Who here knows Cher? Who here doesn't know Cher? I would be really surprised. But anyway, if you guys think about Cher, you know, Cher has had a million hairstyles. And in this particular context, her hair is really big. I mean, her hair is like bigger than her face, okay? So if we draw a contour around Cher's head with the hair, you end up with a shape like this. But if you were to say, be one of those people who says, oh, I don't need to do the hair till later, and you end up creating a contour without the hair. Now, look at this, you guys. They're not the same. Like, if you say to me, are these the same person? I'm like, no way. These are two totally different people. And so I think that alone is really, really important. Becky is saying, thanks for not having masked faces. Was impossible to draw the model's face with her wearing a mask in class yesterday. Well, I'll tell you, I feel for those teachers, but honestly, if you're doing a life drawing session over Zoom, I don't see why people are hiring models. I mean, to me, it's just like drawing a photo. So anyway, Johnny is asking, when putting in structure, do you eyeball the position of the eyes, nose, and mouth? That's a great question. I know some people really like to do different measurements and stuff. I just eyeball the whole thing, honestly, because for me, the accuracy is not that important. And because if you guys want to get really good at proportions, really what it comes down to is measuring with your eye and comparing things. How wide is the eye compared to the nose? How wide is the nose compared to the mouth? That's what I do. And then eventually you start to whittle it down and you get closer and closer and closer. Okay, so let's talk about cheekbones. Cheekbones are pretty dramatic. And so the technical term for them is zygomatic arch, but cheekbone is easier. So, I mean, the thing is, like, I like to nerd out on all those anatomical terms. I'll admit, I really like saying things like tensor fasciae lata, but you know what? In the scheme of things, if cheekbone is easier, then that's totally cool. Okay, now the thing about cheekbones is that depending on who you're looking at, they can have a very different type of appearance. So for example, we have this image of Octavia Spencer. She's so cute. Oh my God, she's adorable. I love her. And so if you look at her, the cheekbones on her face, they're actually pretty round. I mean, part of it is that she's smiling. And when you smile, that really like pushes your cheekbones up pretty dramatically, but you can see how round and organic they look. Or, I'm sorry, Octavia Spencer, Cate Blanchett. I just think she has the greatest cheekbones on the planet. I mean, I totally have a crush on Cate Blanchett. Like, she's just like, oh my God, she's such a scary badass, but also so like beautiful and elegant. She's just perfect. I love her so much. She's like my favorite actress. And so if you look at her cheekbones are not round. They're actually pretty angular. If you look at them, I mean, they're almost like shaped like triangles. And so I feel like on her, they tend to feel a little bit more on the geometric side. I mean, some of it has to do with somebody's weight. Like if you're a heavier person, your cheekbones are going to be a little bit bigger. So it really does change quite a bit. And if you guys really want to emphasize cheekbones, really what you're looking for is form shadows. I mean, look at those shadows. She's got the most amazing cheekbones. Like, did anybody see this movie, Elizabeth? The second one was not as good, but oh man, she was so intense as Elizabeth. Oh my God, I loved her in this movie. If you haven't seen it, shame on you, because this is such a good movie. Oh my God. Simple Triskel is saying it's almost like we're talking about Fassbender. Yeah, because she's my girl crush. Like if there's any, actually, no, that's not true. There's one more girl crush I have, and she's later on. But anyway, I love her so much. She's just like, oh, so good. So you look for the form shadows, and come on, look at her. She is the queen of cheekbones. Like look at that cheekbone on the right-hand side. It's just like pops right out of her facial structure. It's like, oh man, Cate Blanchett, could you make my life easier in terms of identifying the zygomatic arch? Yeah, so she's amazing. And if you guys want to know about cheekbones and lighting and shadows, if you don't know what a form shadow is, shame on you. You should find out the difference between a cast shadow and a form shadow. This video will explain all of that to you guys. CCH says, I find cheeks so difficult. Even when the bone structure is pronounced, the shadow is kind of subtle with gradation, and I overdo the shadow. It really depends on the lighting situation, CCH, because sometimes the form shadows are like almost not there, and sometimes they're really prominent. So I'm actually going to show you guys a couple of images where the cheekbones are not that obvious, and then you can see how that works. We have a question from Flag. Can this, quote, drawing order also apply to drawing from imagination, or are other techniques better? My feeling is you guys should do what you want, okay? I have my suggestions. I have my reasons for why I like to do things a certain way, but ultimately you guys should pick whatever works for you. I think drawing from imagination is like a whole other can of worms. And quite honestly, I am terrible at drawing from imagination, so I'm probably not the best person to talk to about that. But I think this basic concept of big shapes to little shapes, I do think that would work. But as far as like doing the head, neck, and shoulders, like that's really up to you in terms of drawing from imagination. Okay, so here are some cheekbones that actually are not that easy to see. In fact, you might look at this picture of Awkwafina. Like, I love her. She's so funny. I actually have not seen that movie, The Farewell, yet. I really want to see that. But I did watch Crazy Rich Asians, and she was so funny. So her cheekbones in this particular photo, they're subtle. And you might even be like, where are they? I can't see them. Now, a lot of this is the lighting. Because if you look at the lighting, it's barely there. I mean, there's like none of that. I mean, one thing that definitely helps, if somebody smiles, their cheekbones become so much more visible because they push upwards, the skin starts to flex. And so that's a very different scenario. So sometimes it actually does depend on the facial expression, whether or not you see certain parts more prominently than others. Scott is asking, do you know of the Rembrandt triangle on the cheek furthest from the light source? I abuse that in my drawings lately. I don't know about the Rembrandt triangle, Scott. I've actually never heard about that, but that's cool. I mean, maybe I'll look it up later and see what's going on. All right, looks like we've got some Tilda Swinton fans, and that's Simple Triskel and also Kate. Hi, Alien Priestess. You know something? I know somebody who was in a movie with Tilda Swinton. It was that Wes Anderson movie called Moonrise Kingdom. I've never seen it, but Tilda Swinton's in it. And the person I know who was in that movie said that Tilda Swinton is like the nicest person on the planet. I was like, oh man, she's just fabulous. So anyway, let's keep on moving forward with cheekbones. The other thing too, though, apparently if you're like Albrecht Dürer's mother, your cheekbones can look like weapons. Like, Durer, what are you thinking here with this cheekbone? Like, does the cheekbone look like it's gonna like slice you in half? So that's what I think is sort of fun about cheekbones, is that they really can be anything, depending on what you're looking at. We looked at Octavia Spencer, who was so round, Cate Blanchett, who was more angular, Durer's mom, who's apparently out to kill us with her cheekbones. So it's a really, I think, expressive part of the human anatomy that really you guys should work with it because there's so much expressive quality. Oh, Scott has an explanation about Rembrandt's triangle. It's a little triangle of light on the zygomatic arch on the dark side of the face that gets caught because it protrudes out. Okay, cool. Wow. Yeah, I haven't heard about that before. Okay, and Sophia is saying, usually I avoid references that have very subtle shadows because I struggle giving depth to them. You're not the only one. I mean, I have definitely been in situations where the shadows were so not there that I just don't want to do it because it's like too infuriating to handle something like that. Apparently 10,000 Crows is saying, if you don't bring Benedict into this cheekbone convo at least once, I'm going to be so disappointed. Well, I did tell you guys, I had to take a break from my hot white men because you know what? We sort of have to acknowledge other genders on this planet if I'm going to do something more comprehensive. Okay, so let's talk about the nasal bone. Like I said, I like starting with the nasal bone because it's in the middle, and I think it's easier from my point of view to start in the middle and push out. Usually if I start at the top, say with the eye sockets, and then I move myself down, I tend to mess up the proportions more because by the time you get down to the bottom, something has changed. So I find when I go from the center and move outwards, it's a lot easier. Yes, Seven Angelic, you are correct. It is Hot Ladies Night. Yep, this is an all-female stream. So yeah, those of you who were waiting for my hot white men, I'm sorry. I just, need to acknowledge other body types. So the thing about the nasal bone that I think is a little bit tricky is that you hear a lot of people say things like, oh, noses, they're so difficult. I'm having such a hard time with that and everything. But really, you can't think about it as just the nose. You have to start to break it down so that it's the nasal bone, okay? And it's cartilage, okay? Because only parts of the nose are bony. Actually, a lot of the nose, the whole bottom half of it is all cartilage. So yes, the nose is a single form, but you can't treat it the same way because different parts of the nose feel differently. Like some of them are very mushy, some of them are hard, and depending on the structure of your nose, some people have more cartilage, some people have less. Yeah, like Iconic is saying, well, now I'm touching my face to feel my bones. Honestly, that is so smart. Like if you guys go in and you touch your cheekbones and you can feel where they protrude, touch your nose, see where the cartilage is, see where the nasal bone is, that really is going to teach you a lot about what you're drawing, because you guys have heard me say before that so much of anatomy is really learning how to identify things. So a lot of it, yes, is in your drawing skill, which is important, but you got to know, is it bone? Is it cartilage? Is it muscle? Is it fat? Once you guys learn how to distinguish those things, that's going to help you a lot. Paris is saying, I struggle so bad with shading the face and pushing depth with the number 2 pencil. What helps? What I recommend you try, Paris, we actually have a live drawing stream. It's the back of a female figure. You'll see it in the thumbnail. And I actually use something called graphite powder. I find that with a lot of people, they don't have enough tools when they draw with pencil, because when I use graphite, I use so many tools. I use a woodless pencil, graphite powder, 3 different erasers. So I recommend, Paris, that you expand your toolkit when it comes to graphite. Okay. I think we should identify the nasal bone on Irene Adler because Irene Adler in Sherlock, she's got a great nose. Hey, she's in this. I'm here talking about her nasal bone. Her nasal bone is very important. So here, let's show you guys the nasal bone. See, I told you guys, I discovered how to put a GIF into the slideshow, and now it's like, there's no turning back. So if you guys look at the nasal bone, it's the upper section right there. And there's another nasal bone. So, it would be wrong for me to not acknowledge 2 opportunities, 2 different examples to show you guys the nasal bone. I just got to make sure. All right. You Tilda Swinton fans, oh boy, you're in for something. Because, okay, I have to say, in addition to Cate Blanchett, I also worship Tilda Swinton. She's so creepy, and she's awesome in everything. I love her. I don't know. I sort of think she and Cate Blanchett, they're sort of similar. I sort of feel like Tilda Swinton is like a scary version of Cate Blanchett. They're both fabulous, though. I just love them so much. You see 10,000 Crows, I came through for you. It is. It's about her name. Like Irene Adler, she's got good bone structure. And I just really want to make sure that you guys don't miss out on that. Becky Pass says, I found that reducing the nose to certain shapes helps me understand it more as a whole. You know something else, you guys? Here's the thing about noses. A lot of people tell me that they struggle with them. And honestly, I think it's just they're weird looking. It's just like foreshortening. Like I've told you guys in the past, foreshortening looks weird. Noses are weird. I mean, it doesn't matter who you're looking at. They're strange looking, okay? All right, so here we have Tilda Swinton. We've got her nasal bone. And if we go forward, you guys will see that the lower section of her nose, that is all cartilage, okay? Now, granted, her cartilage is pretty angular. Like my nose is like a mushroom. Like my nose is so mushy. Hers actually has like structure to it. So it actually like really depends on the person and what exactly it is you're looking at. Neil is saying, I struggle when drawing my own nose because my nose is flat and looks like a tomato. That sounds just like mine. I was thinking mushroom, but you know, tomato, same thing, whatever. Okay, so we have the nasal bone, we have the cartilage, and now we have foreshortening. Look at this. This is like the most brilliant photo. Like we're learning about nasal bones, we're learning about cartilage, and we have foreshortening. Like I was so excited when I found this photo of her. It was like really, really cool. Simple Triskel is saying, sometimes I get so caught up in the method, I don't look at the model enough, but practice observing issues and then practicing more helps. Yeah, it's hard because you can get very absorbed into your drawing. And that makes sense to me because why are you there? But the thing is, you really need to rely on just training your eye and getting really good about seeing and putting those things together. Sammy says, I think with noses, it helps to shade in the shapes rather than draw with contour lines. Just pay attention to the shapes of the shadows. Yeah, it varies from person to person. I mean, Sammy, I'm a tone person. So I feel like that for me is a more intuitive way to do it. Like I'm not somebody who's very good at line, but I think for other people, line might be better. So it really sort of depends. Iconic is asking, how far does the bone go down in the nose? I don't think that there's any particular rule for that. I mean, from what I've seen, it's like every person is so totally different. So it's a little bit hard to say. Okay. We also have a foreshortened head here because you guys need another example. You know, I wasn't sure if you were going to comprehend the foreshortening thing. So I brought you Halle Berry, who also is hot. Oh my God, she's super hot. I also love her hair in this photo, okay? So she is a foreshortened head. And one of the things you'll notice, things like the eye being behind the nose, that's definitely a very clear-cut situation of foreshortening, okay? And also same thing, point of view, us looking up at her definitely is a foreshortened head. Okay, so for those of you who are confused about foreshortening, let me clear up some things, okay? This is a foreshortened head. The head is not foreshortened here, okay? So I just really want to make sure that this is a lesson you really thoroughly understand, and I think I should repeat it because, you know, maybe you didn't sink in the first time. So here we go. Foreshortened head on Halle Berry, and the head is not foreshortened here. So good. Does everybody understand? I hope you guys do. I actually have not seen this movie. This movie is Swordfish. Hugh Jackman's sort of young in it. I don't know. This is maybe like 10, 15 years ago. But anyway, well, you know, Seven Angelic, I really think that an important thing is that you guys know what is not foreshortened, because if you don't understand that, you know, you're not really going to understand the foreshortening. Oh, I'm glad to know that 10,000 Crows is confirming that you understand the difference. Well, good job, you guys, learning all your lessons. Okay, and if you missed it, this is the tutorial on foreshortening where I go over in depth all of the various sections. Just one more comment here from Xavier. The nasal bone usually ends wherever that weird bump is in the bridge, which can be different for everyone. You know who oh, well, he's not a female, but Owen Wilson, he's got a weird nose. Like it looks crooked from some certain shots. But anyway, check out some images of him because his stuff is, yeah, really unusual. Okay, so let's talk about the chin. And the chin, I think sometimes it gets the short end of the stick because let's face it, it's just not that dramatic, okay? And the thing is, the chin really is a part of the jawbone, but it does have really its own territory. And depending on the person, sometimes you can see this and sometimes you can't. But actually, it's not just the division down here. The part that I think really matters on the chin that actually a lot of people, I think, don't pay enough attention to, there's like this little small flat plane. It's in between the lower lip and the chin. It's that little yellow shape that I put in there. And I think a lot of people don't realize that there's like this little valley that's in between the lip and the chin. And that really is the subdivision of that area that I think is really important to keep track of. And it's subtle. Like on a lot of people, sometimes it's not really that visible. Okay, now the other thing too is that if you have a person who's a little bit larger, okay, maybe their chin doesn't like jut out as dramatically, but the thing about these bony landmarks that you guys have to remember is that the bony landmarks are always visible, okay? It doesn't matter how thin or large somebody is, they're still gonna be there, okay? So we have this image of Lizzo here, okay? So you can see in Lizzo's chin, the chin is still visible. It's not like the chin got covered with flesh or something like that. And so I suppose that's probably why people have double chins, is because that bony part of the chin still juts out, but then you also have like flesh that's underneath it, which is probably what creates the double chin. So I think that's important. Seven Angelic is asking, do you think skull sketches can help? Absolutely. In fact, I know not everybody can do this, but I actually bought a fairly inexpensive plastic skull. Can't remember where I got it, but it was like $40. And it was so nice to have one that was 3D that I could like move around. I don't know if you guys saw, but I did those etchings of those wonky looking skulls. Those were actually drawn from that plastic skull. And I had a lot of fun with that. So like if you are really serious and you can afford it to get a plastic skull, it's very, very helpful because it's just much, much better than drawing from an image or photo out of a book. Itachi says, when I drew the nose, I always look for the angle, not in using planer, then overlaying it with all the other details. Helps a lot because sometimes the angle of the nose is kind of tricky. It is. It's really hard, and every single person is completely different. So that's what is so challenging, but also so much fun. Blue Wolf Spirit says you can probably get a cheap one at the Halloween store. Yeah, you probably can, actually. And honestly, it's like it doesn't have to be like perfectly anatomically correct. I think the important thing is that you're really understanding the mass. That's the most important thing. Okay, so here we have the chin still visible, even though we have a figure that's larger than the other ones we were looking at. Now, here's the thing about the ear, okay? You might think the ear is not as important because it does not have any bone in it. The ear is entirely cartilage, but it is so, so useful as a landmark. And so this goes back to what I was saying earlier about how because I don't measure, I'm just constantly connecting things together. Like, where is the eye compared to the nose? And the ear is such a good landmark to do that. So for example, you can place different facial features in relation to where the ear is. So a lot of people might say, okay, well, where does the nose line up with the ear? Which is higher, the eye or the ear? And so that's the type of proportional relationships that I'm talking about here. Okay, I'm not talking about, oh, measuring things like that. Okay, so here's Regina King. Did you guys see her in Watchmen? She's a badass in that movie. I actually got a little bored, but you know what I liked about that show is Trent Reznor did the music track and it was so good. Like I felt like I was watching Watchmen just so I could listen to the music. It's like the story, I got a little bit bored. I like Regina King, but the story wasn't that great. So anyway, if you have the ear located there, all right, where are the eyes in relation to the ears? In this case, the ear is below the eye. Now, depending on the person, that may not always be the case. All right, so let's talk about the jawbone, okay? So we're looking at the jawbone. Technically, it's called the mandible, but you can call it whatever you want. So Salma Hayek, she's got nice jawbones. Like her jawbones are so pronounced that you really can see them not just from the side, but from the front as well. Like I feel like some people, if they don't have a really pronounced jawbone, if you look at them straight on, it just looks round, but hers doesn't. Like she really has almost a boxy jawbone, which sounds weird, but it actually really makes sense when you look at her face. All right, so if you look at this, really this is the bony part of the jawbone, okay? Because the upper part of the jawbone where it touches the cheekbone, that's got like muscle and tendon on top of it. So it really is only the bottom part of the jawbone that you're really going to see jut out. Now, here's another really cool thing. You guys have heard me say before that anatomy is connect the dots. Here is a quintessential example of connect the dots. So one really cool place where three things intersect, jawbone, cheekbone, and ear, they all come together. It's like an intersection of those three things. So I would say, you guys, if you're doing a really quick figure drawing, let's say it's like a 5-minute gesture, a lot of people go, oh, I don't know what to do with the face. I don't have enough time. And so sometimes people just like try to draw the eyes, which always fails. So what I say to people, listen, if you want to put something in the face and it's a really short figure drawing, if anything, just draw cheekbone, jawbone, and ear. Just those three things. If you do those three things, that is totally enough for such a short pose. Paris says, I bounce around with my reference points and I struggle the most with eye placement. Part of that, Paris, might also be just that people focus on the eyes a lot because the eyes are how we communicate. And so as much as I like talking about anatomical structure and everything, I do think you need to remember in the scheme of things, every single part of the face has this incredible history and mythology behind it. Like you think about eyes and what they symbolize and how people perceive lips and all the different associations. And so I think that while the anatomical stuff is important, you do have to step back and say, well, wait a minute, maybe there's a psychological reason why I'm struggling with the eyes or so. Buntyful says, I always tend to draw the eyes first. It makes it hard for me to do gesture drawing. Yeah, so Buntyful, if you're doing a really quick pose, don't even bother with the eyes. Like if you're going to put in anything, jawbone, cheekbone, and ear, and maybe the eye sockets if you have time. I really feel like there's not a lot you can do in such a short period of time. Scott is asking, are there pockets of reddish tint around the eyes? I feel like I'm seeing that a lot. I mean, it's hard to say, Scott, because oftentimes a lot of the photos, people are wearing like mega makeup. So I think it's person to person. Okay, so let's look at this intersection and how this works. Okay, so here we have the jawbone. And then you put the cheekbone, zygomatic arch. And if you put in the ear, does everybody see that one point where they're all touching? It's phenomenal. It's like, wow, all these things come together. They all connect. Okay, so here's what you do. I love Whoopi Goldberg. Oh my God. When I found out that she had these white dreadlocks, I'm like, oh my God, those are intense. I love that. I love her hair so much. It's funny because Whoopi Goldberg used to be like in movies and now she's like talking about politics. It's like kind of weird for those of us who grew up with her in the 80s, but I love her dreads. I think they're like just the coolest thing. So here's the thing. If you find a jawbone, let's just say, okay, here's a jawbone. We found it on Whoopi Goldberg, okay? You're going to find the ear because you know that that upper section of the jawbone is connected to the ear, okay? Now, if you find the ear, you know where the cheekbone is because you know that the cheekbone inserts. You guys can find it on yourselves. Like touch your cheekbone and you'll feel it leads you right to your ear. It's phenomenal. Really, really cool. Paris is saying, I hate myself every time I listen to those stupid how to draw a face YouTube videos because they're never right. Well, I don't know it's so much that there's a right and correct, as much as it is a lot of the stuff I see online. Usually the approach people take, it's so rigid that they don't give you a lot of options to step outside of that. I'm a little bit funky that I'm probably a lot looser than a lot of other people, but I think it's because I like to allow for the fact that people are so different. Like, look at the incredible range of people we've seen in the slideshow so far. It's remarkable. And so I just don't think you can be that rigid about anatomy because there's always an anomaly to something else. Okay, so the other thing too, if you find the cheekbone, you're gonna find the jawbone. It's a miracle. So basically you find any one of these three things, you are like set. So these are the things that, in my opinion, put the face together, because all the other things are easy for them to sort of like float off. But the thing is, it's like you can't like take your cheekbone and like move it to the left because then it's not connected to the ear anymore. And that doesn't make any sense. So really important to think about that. Okay, let's talk about eye sockets because, oh, I love eye sockets. So dramatic. They're like, I don't know. I always imagine the eye sockets were like the pits of Tartarus or something. Like they're so deep. I just love it. Okay. Oh, Meryl Streep. I love you. Okay, I take it back. My girl crushes. Well, no, there's one more. I think I have one more towards the end. Meryl Streep, specifically in this movie, The Devil Wears Prada. Tell me if you guys saw this movie, okay? Because I want to be her. Like, if I could be like Meryl Streep in Devil Wears Prada, like, I just want to like strut around and like whisper things and like kick people's butt. I just want to be her. She's just fabulous. So the thing about the eye socket is that so many people, like I said, they're fixated on the eye. I mean, wouldn't you? You're looking at Meryl Streep. She's looking at you with this death stare. Of course you're thinking about the eyeball. You're not thinking about the eye socket. No way. Okay. But the thing is, you can't place an eye if you don't know where the eye socket is. So the eye socket has to come first because that eye is just like going wherever. So I would definitely make sure you build that eye socket first. Neil is saying, I always exaggerate the eye sockets. My portraits end up looking like exhausted people. My problem, I would draw portraits and people would be like, I look 10 years older. I'm like, sorry. Not a lot I can do that. Okay, so if you look at this image, there's the eye socket and there it is. Okay, so you got to build that first before you can put in the eye. Now, here's what confuses people about the eye sockets is I think we've all seen enough rubber skulls, especially around Halloween, where the eye sockets really are not correct. I mean, I've seen some where the eye sockets are shaped like eggs, and it just is very weird, which is fine. I mean, if you're doing a Halloween rubber skull, be my guest, do whatever you want, okay? But if you're trying to draw anatomically and you're doing a portrait, you got to look at the fact that they're not circles, but they're also not quite squares either. They're a very strange shape. So let me show you guys how I see the eye socket. So I look at it in terms of 4 strokes. There's this stroke that goes above the nasal bone, one that goes across the brow, a third one that really is part of the zygomatic arch, and then you have a 4th one down here, okay? I like doing this as 4 separate strokes instead of tracing the shape, because I think for me, it lets me think about the eye socket in a more structural manner. Because like I said, it does quickly turn into like an egg or something funky like that, which does not have a lot of stuff. Wait, who is saying, does the Riley method work and is it anatomically correct? You know something, I've never heard of the Riley method before. So maybe some of you guys in the chat can answer their question because I've never seen it. Maybe I'll look it up later to see, or maybe in the Discord chat, somebody can send me the link. And let's see, Sarah Beat says, I get the darks and lights mixed up on the under eye and everybody looks like they haven't slept in years. It's hard because the thing is there are lines there, and if you don't put them in, they look weird. But then if you put them in, people look really old. So it's really, really tricky to do that. Okay. So here's what we got. I love Judi Dench. She's just so, she's so classy and fabulous. I love her voice. She's so good in like those James Bond movies. So anyway, you got to draw the eye socket before the eye. Okay, so we have here is that first stroke I talked about that really is up the side of the nasal bone. We have the top of the brow, which is coming through. Now we have the side that is a little piece of the cheekbone. And then on the bottom, that closes off the eye socket. So there's how it fits. It's like, why would you do the eye first? Okay, like once you have that eye socket, you just drop the eye in there. It's like no problem. So definitely make sure you do that. Okay. Eye sockets are deep, you guys. And I don't mean like just, I mean like deep, like going down and digging into your soul deep. I mean, only Kathy Kollwitz can do that, obviously. But like what's amazing about Kathy Kollowitz's drawings is that if you guys look at this portrait, there's actually no eyeballs. Like actually it's all in shadow. And I find that very engaging because sometimes people, when they draw the face, they get really into like the pupils and drawing all the details in there. But it's like, look at how haunting this portrait is. And yet there's no indication of pupils. It's all eye socket. And so the eye sockets, to me, there's a drama to an eye socket that honestly you don't get with an eyeball. It's just not the same thing. I mean, obviously it's great if you can do both. What I'm saying is that I think a lot of people severely underestimate what you can do with an eye socket. They expect the eyeball to carry everything, but the eyeball can do its own thing, and eye sockets can be really, really phenomenal. Okay, this is a cool comment. Alice in Wonderland says, whoops, didn't realize how small the eyes are compared to the eye socket. Yeah, isn't it surprising? Like when you take a look, like look at this Kathy Kollwitz drawing, like the eye sockets are going out, you know? And if you imagine an eyeball like underneath those eyelids, it's tiny. Like it really is not that prominent of an object. Okay. So let's talk about lips, because I think lips are something people struggle with a lot. And the thing that I would say about lips is usually when I see people drawing lips, the main problem is they tend to trace the lips, as in like they outline the lips. So they'll like trace the top lip, trace the lower lip. So you're really just tracing the shape. You're not really building the mouth. That's really how you guys have to think about portraits, is you have to say, I'm building a portrait, like you're a sculptor. Okay. Because I think when people start tracing things, like just drawing the contour, it doesn't work out so well. Okay. So what I usually do when I start with the lips is I draw the line that separates the lips. Okay. So if you look at this image, this is Ava Mendes, by the way. I just watched that movie Hitch that she was in with Will Smith. It was really cute. Jordan McCracken Foster, one of the teaching artists, he loves Will Smith, so he told me to watch that movie. So that was very cute. So I start with the line that separates the lips. And you can see in my very quick charcoal portrait that I did in the beginning, that's what I draw, okay? It's just the line to separate the lips. And it's actually not till later that I really start to actually add the lips, because again, like the eyeballs, the lips are not really that big. They're very, very thin. And so there actually isn't a lot to draw there, but that separation is very, very important. Okay, so if we have the line that separates the lips, you build the lips around that line, okay? That makes a big difference in terms of your mindset, because if you start in the middle and then you build the forms around, that's very different than if you trace the outline of the lips, because it's putting you in the mindset that you're actually building something. Thank you so much, Tom G, for the super chat. We greatly appreciate your support. As you guys know, our content is 100% free and we rely entirely on donations. So thank you so much for that. Okay, so you build the lips around the line. Now here's another thing that's going to help you guys too. Look for these pockets. that are at the edge of the lips. Because really, the most common problem I see when people are drawing lips is that the lips oftentimes feel like they're not in the face. They sort of look like they're floating on top of the face. And these pockets that I'm showing you guys right now, these are so critical to making the lips really feel like they're in the face, like they're actually sculpted in there. Very, very helpful. Stream 98 is confessing to us, I drew the lips and they look like sausages. You know what? Everything looks like sausages. Like every time I do a draw along, that is like the #1 form that we always talk about, because it is easy for things to end up looking that way. Okay. So if you guys look at this, once you put those pockets in there, it's like those pockets, it's almost like they're the stake that you drive into the ground if you want to hold a tent up. It's like they really drive that form all the way into the face. And the other thing to think about too is the pockets, they're small, but they do contribute to the sculptural, like round nature of the face. Okay, because your face is not flat. Your face comes out and certain parts jut out more than others. So the pockets of the face, they actually are pushed back into your face, okay? And then the middle of the lips, those jut out more. So if you guys do this, if you touch the front, like middle of your lip, and then you go back to the pockets, you'll feel the pockets go back, okay? And then your lips come forward. So that's a very simple sculptural idea that makes the lips more three-dimensional. Because a lot of people do think about the lips as being flat, but they're not, okay? So start here, move back to those pockets. You'll feel yourself going back into space. Okay, there are all these creases that are really, really fun. I'm going to help you guys a lot. This is my other girl crush. I love Kate Middleton. I don't know. I feel so bad for Meghan Markle, though. Like that whole thing with all the racism and all the way that the British press treated her was so terrible. But I love Kate Middleton. I don't know. She's so pretty. I just love her. Plus, she's got all those hats. She's just so cool. So if you look at these creases, there are these two creases that are on the side of the cheekbones. And so this is sort of like trying to supplement what the cheekbones are already doing. But the creases help make that definition a little bit stronger. Aipque says, I try as much as possible to avoid open lips, especially ones with visible teeth. Is there a way to draw teeth without making them look bad? Well, I am going to do a stream at some point because the next month, I'm going to start breaking it down. Like we'll do a stream on eyes, one on noses, one on hair. I'll do one on lips. And so probably when I do the lips one is when I'm going to cover teeth. But in a nutshell, my feeling is that the biggest problem with teeth, people outline them too much. So they go, oh, there are 5 teeth here. I will outline every single tooth. But the thing is, teeth aren't really like that. You have to think about the teeth as a group. So you think about a group of 4 teeth, and you may not outline every single tooth. I think it's like people make the teeth too pronounced, and that's what makes them look a little bit creepy. I mean, it sort of reminds me of what we were talking earlier about fingernails. How if you like trace the fingernails too dramatically, it looks weird. Like it looks like you've got dirty Michael Fassbender, Macbeth fingernails, which are gross and full of grime. And teeth are the same way. Like if you overemphasize them by outlining everything, I think it's a little bit too difficult. Juliana says, I can't even draw a self-portrait because my braces just changed my whole beauty. Oh my goodness. That is like really, really dramatic. Well, maybe it is time to do self-portrait. I mean, you don't know. I mean, braces they're pretty dramatic. I mean, if you look at how people transform when they get braces. I mean, it depends on the person, obviously. And I like this comment from Eric, who's saying, I find it helpful to outline the teeth, but then erase those lines so they're not as prominent. Yeah, that's a great way to de-emphasize the individual teeth so it doesn't have that like creepy, smiley look that we're all talking about. Dimples help too. Now, not everybody has dimples. Only some people do. But if they do, you should definitely take advantage of them because it's just another landmark for you guys to take advantage of. And then check this out, okay? You get creases, dimples, pockets. It's like, wow, there's so much to draw. Like, this is exactly why you don't need to really pay attention to muscles. There's so many other landmarks that you just really don't have to think about it. For example, we have this Peter Paul Rubens drawing of his wife. I love this drawing because there's so little shading on the face, and yet it looks like a marble sculpture. It's a phenomenal drawing. So if you look at her, like, she's got excellent mouth pockets. She's got great dimples. She was also his wife. And great cheekbones. So you guys, walk around. Next time you look at a portrait drawing, a painting, see what you can find. People, it's a little tricky. You don't want to be a total creep, but you can definitely do it in movies and stuff like that. Itachi is asking, one artist I followed, Marco Bucci, said to think of the entire picture. I don't know how to do it because I still tend to look for details. It's hard. I mean, I think a lot of people, it's much easier to spot a detail than it is to look for the structure. My recommendation for you, make yourself do 10-minute gesture drawings of heads so that you stop yourself before you can do details. Because if you're doing details in a 10-minute drawing, it's way too soon. So I think if you just do gesture drawings, that's probably a good way for you to think about that. And I like this comment about teeth. Xavier saying, I try to remember that the teeth are shadowed and hidden inside the mouth so they can be kind of vague. Yeah, oftentimes what I see is people, and we'll do this in another stream, you know the whites of the eyes? So many people draw them literally white. And I'm like, they're never white. There's always like a shadow on top because they're underneath the eyelids. And so this is where the observation is more important because your brain tells you, oh, those are whites of the eyes. But then your eye tells you, no, they're actually in shadow and you're not going to see them that well. So that's a really good point. Scott is saying, what medium does Peter Paul Rubens use? I think these are chalk drawings. So I think it's like probably something like Conte crayon, something like that, I would guess. And this is a great photo. This is Cate Blanchett. Can you believe it? Like, this is such a cool picture of her. This was actually shot by Annie Leibovitz. I'm sure you guys have heard of her. She's such a famous celebrity photographer. And I love this. I mean, anything with Cate Blanchett, I will watch anything she's in. It could be the most boring movie. And I'm like, I will watch it because she's amazing. So one thing you guys will see as well, forehead wrinkles. Okay. And I think with forehead wrinkles, it's very easy for people to just say, oh, there are these lines that go across the head. And yeah, that is what they are. But the thing is, you have to see that wrinkles in general, they're not just in random places. They really do follow the form. Okay. So if we look, for example, at the shape of the brow on the skull, check this out, you guys. They're the same. Okay. So the wrinkles that you see on the forehead, they follow the form of the brow. And so that is so great because, I mean, it makes sense. Like the skin is on the skull. And so if the skull goes this way, of course, the skin's going to go that way too. But I think what I see oftentimes is when people are adding wrinkles, it's almost like the wrinkles just get drawn on. But you can't think about it that way. You have to think about the tension of the skin being stretched and why that skin is stretching in that direction. Because I think some people, if they were drawing the wrinkles on her head, they might quickly just draw them straight across and they wouldn't see maybe the nuance of the way that the line sort of like dips down a little bit. So really important to see that. Same thing here. Like this is a very different facial expression than what we saw in the other one, but it still mimics the shape of the brow. So keep that in mind. This is why even when you guys are doing just wrinkles, you still have to think about skeletal structure. The skeletal structure never goes away. It's always a consideration for everything. Okay. By the way, I had to sneak in these Xaver Messerschmitt portraits. These are a series of sculptures that Messerschmitt did. They were called character heads. And I studied these a lot because when I was doing my Falling series, I was looking at very dramatic facial expressions. And I mean, it's almost like here, it's like I feel like Annie Leibovitz totally ripped off Messerschmitt. I'm sure she was not trying to do that. I'm not accusing her of anything, but it's like, wow, these are like really, really similar to those Cate Blanchett photographs. Okay, wrinkles are the same way. They follow the form. Helen Mirren, I love your wrinkles. Like, you guys see the wrinkles on the side of her face? I mean, they look like a Japanese woodblock print. You know what I'm talking about? Those prints that are like beautiful, elegant, like waves in the ocean. Like, that's what her wrinkles look like to me. They're like so beautiful. Like, I love that so much. So if you look at the wrinkles on Helen Mirren, you'll see, I mean, like, that's the shape of the eye socket. That's going to be the shape of the wrinkles. The wrinkles are following the shape of the eye socket. And then same thing here, because the skin's getting pulled backwards. You see the wrinkles following that form. Same thing at the bottom, okay? You see the skin being stretched downwards. The wrinkles continue to follow the form. And then same thing at the top as well. So wrinkles really make sense if you think about them structurally. It's just, I think a lot of people get very cosmetic with that. They just sort of say, oh, well, it's skin. I don't have to think about structure. You do. You really have to think about structure the whole time. Now, here's another cool thing. And I honestly did not see this until I did my series of portraits, the graphite drawings of elderly figures. Wrinkles cross over other wrinkles. Like, they're not always parallel. Like, especially like Maggie Smith. Oh, I love her. She's so salty. Like, I don't know, that like salty Maggie Smith voice when she's being like really critical just like cracks me up. She's so funny. Actually, I was not that into Downton Abbey, but I remember her. Did anybody here see Room with a View that had Helena Bonham Carter in it? And Maggie Smith is just so funnily annoying in that movie. So anyway, wrinkles, they really become almost like a weave. It's very hard to explain, but if you have a bunch of wrinkles that are all going in the same direction, oftentimes what you'll see is wrinkles that cross through them. And that's where that gets really complicated because, oh my God, like all the bits of flesh and the way things stretch. I mean, I think it's beautiful. Like, that's why I was doing those elderly figures, because I felt like I was just so immersed into those forms and I love them so much. So this is something that I get very excited about. And I know for some people it can be very, very tricky. Yeah, like Lisa is saying, these can look like crisscross scars when drawn. They're so expressive. I love wrinkles. Like, I'll be honest, you guys, if I had the choice between drawing an older figure and a younger figure, I almost would always rather draw the older figure because there's just more to draw. Like, sometimes, like, there was this one time I was teaching at RISD and we had this one model who was pretty young. She's probably like in her 20s and she was also very thin. And so between those two things, there just was a lot to draw. Like, I remember her arms, there just was not a lot of form or character to them. And I found them very challenging. So when you draw somebody who's older, it's like there's more to hold on to in a way. There's more anchors. And I mean, that's my personal preference. I mean, it depends on the person, obviously. Okay, so let's talk about this funny thing called the philtrum. So the philtrum is this little thing that is in between the nose and the lips, okay? Now, philtrums are really weird because, like, some of them are pretty big, but I actually think Penelope Cruz, like, her philtrum is, like, small. I don't know. I've always felt like her nose was, like, too close to her mouth, which is so weird because she's gorgeous. So, like, I don't know what my deal is with that. But there's something about how dramatic that is, like how close her nose is to her mouth and her philtrum being, like, so tiny that I think is really interesting. And then other people have philtrums that are just much wider or softer. Hers are actually really pronounced. Like, I look at hers and I feel like they almost look like ridges. Like, they look very stiff compared to some other philtrums that I've seen. So yeah. Let's see. We have a question here from Z Squiggly. What do I do if the head doesn't line up with the vanishing point? Are you talking about linear perspective? Because that's a whole other can of worms. And I think we will address that later because we've got another stuff going on right now. Okay, so this is the philtrum. So it's right there in between the nose and the lips. And that's really what it looks like. Like hers is tiny. I'm like, it looks like it got shrunk by a machine or something. It's so, so small. But anyway, there's the philtrum. But then the other thing about the philtrum that I almost think is more important is that there are these two flat planes that are next to the philtrum on each side. Here's what I want you guys to do. Okay, find your philtrum, which is here, and then feel these two planes. Okay, the two planes that come down, they're flat. A lot of people don't think they're flat. Okay, so this is flat, and then your cheekbones become round again. Okay, so your cheekbones are very much separate from these two flat planes. And then we saw there are like these creases that come down as well. Okay, so if there's anything you guys need to know about the philtrum, it's these two planes, because those two planes to me, they influence the three-dimensionality of the face, and they also connect to the upper lip. And so they might seem not that important, but if you don't draw them as planes, they can start to get really flat really fast. And that becomes very, very confusing. Neil is saying there's a popular Filipino scary story which states that if you see someone without a philtrum, it means they're a monster disguised as a human. Wow, that is like really, really intense. Really cool. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, we have a lot of things here about philtrums. Blue Wolf Spirit says, where God put a finger and went, that is cool. I didn't realize there was like all this stuff around philtrums. Okay, so look for those flat planes. That, I think the planes are more important than the philtrum. The philtrum is like very cosmetic, okay? Now, here's the thing. We've talked before, sometimes things are hard to find. So it's like here we see it on Penelope Cruz, but it's not that clear. Okay, sometimes it's hard to see. So if it's not easy to see on her, I think we'll have to look at Michael Fassbender's philtrum instead, because his is clear as day. And they're out to dinner in that terrible Ridley Scott movie, The Counselor, which I can't believe I sat through. I do. He's hot in that movie, guys. Oh my God. So, you can't see hers. We've got, you got to look at the closest philtrum, the closest one that's available is right there. So let's learn about this. Guys, I watched Jane Eyre during my lunch break today. Oh my God, I have like a problem. It's so bad. Oh my God. Yes, Scott, The Counselor, it was so bad. And there were so many like good actors in it, like Cameron Diaz and Javier Bardem and Brad Pitt were like all in it. And I was like, how could this movie be so crappy? But oh my God, there's this one scene where Michael Fassbender is like cooking in the kitchen and he like picks up this whisk. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know somebody could be that hot holding a whisk. It's like incredible. Oh my God. Yes, I know. I stopped counting 10,000 Crows. Like oh my God, that movie's so hot in that movie. Okay. Now, here's the thing. You guys have heard me say earlier that mostly the head really is about the skull. So you will see lots and lots of diagrams like this, where it's all these muscles stretching and orbicularis and blah, blah, blah. I have never found any of this muscle stuff to be that helpful, because so many of the muscles that you look up in the face, they're really flat. Like you see this one up here that's on your forehead, like you totally don't see that. Like you are really going to see wrinkles before you see something like that. And then all these other things that are like twisting and turning, like all these like rubber band muscle tendon things, like you really don't see them. So although I know that a lot of people like to look at these structures because it's like, oh, I want to know the muscles, I honestly feel like the only muscle that matters is the masseter. And even that one is not that big of a deal. And so for those of you who are maybe like stressing about, oh, muscle this, muscle that, in the face, you can sort of forget about it, because there's cartilage, there's all these other, like it really does not matter that much. Weeaboo is saying, I'm studying. I'm so happy for all the Anatomy for Artists updates and Draw With Me's that have been coming out. Well, there's more to come because I definitely want to break it down and do a whole stream just on the eye, just on the hair, because, oh my God, there's so much. I was actually going to talk to you guys about the neck today. And once I got through all the slides for the face, I'm like, dude, this is going to be a 4-hour lecture if I include the neck. So we'll do a whole stream just on the neck. So that way you guys can take a look at that. Okay, so this is the masseter. And really the reason why it's quite visible is it just like softens the jawbone. Because if the jawbone was directly under the skin, you would look creepy, okay? You would look really, really icky and angular. You would have like that Durer drawing of the dagger cheekbone. It would not look good, okay? So the masseter is pretty important. And the masseter, you can see it's attached to the bottom of the cheekbone and it attaches to the bottom of the jawbone. So it's a pretty like meaty, substantial muscle compared to the other ones is pretty important. So here's the masseter. You can see it from the front view and you can see it from the side view. It is much less substantial on the front view just because you can't see it quite as well. And this is a comment from Seven Angelic. Seeing the muscles around the mouth is a bit handy just to notice it's not flat. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that understanding the dimensionality of the face is important. I just feel like there are certain muscles on other parts of the body that are like clear as day. And it's like, you can't get around seeing them. Whereas I feel like the facial muscles, they're just really subtle. So they're not quite as useful as some of the other ones. And so there's the masseter. Zendaya, you got a nice masseter. You've also got great earrings, which are distracting me right now. But if you look past Zendaya's earrings, you can see the masseter gives the jawbone this like softer, more tender look. Because the jawbone, if you think about it, really could be a weapon. Like I found a mandible, not a human one. I'm not that gross. I found an animal mandible in the desert a couple of weeks ago, and it really looks like a dagger. Like you really look like you could stab somebody with it. And so I feel like the masseter, it's like a little pillow for your jawbone to make sure things don't look quite so angular. Let's see. Ibque is saying, for me, the muscles are so invisible for the artist, I feel no need to study them. They are just too abstract just looking at them. Ibque, I don't think it's that they're invisible. I think it's that some stick out more than others. And honestly, a lot of them don't stick out because I went to school with a lot of people who were like obsessed with anatomy, wanted to know every single muscle. And ultimately, I was like, you can't even see half of these. Like a lot of muscles, they're like buried under other muscles, so they're not even visible. So that's what's tricky about muscles. They're harder to see than bones. I think bones are much, much more visible. Okay, so if we look at Zendaya's cheekbones, she's got really nice cheekbones. And then we take a look at what's next, which is the jawbone, okay? Really, this is how muscles work, is that they attach to certain bones and they get stretched, okay? So here's the masseter, okay? The masseter connects to the bottom of the cheekbones and goes down to the jawbone. And that's really what you're looking at when you're thinking about that masseter form. So we also have this self-portrait drawing tutorial, and I do go over some of the basics, not as much in depth as I did today, but it does give you the context of what to look for when you're actually drawing a portrait. And Camille is saying, what muscles are on the cheek, or is that just the bones? Well, if you're talking, Camille, about like up here, like this is bone, okay? Then there's like stuff in here, but the individual muscles, they don't pop out. You just feel like flesh in here, because in here, this is like holes, like a literal holes, like in your skull that's obviously being covered by some muscle. But yeah, this really is all bone up here. I mean, honestly, you guys just touch your face. See where the bones are, see where the muscles are. That's going to help you a lot. Okay, we also have two draw-alongs with Benedict, draw his cheekbones. And we also have this other one where I drew on black paper, using Robert Mapplethorpe portraits. So these are 2 good draw-alongs if you guys want to practice putting in all that stuff. It's the same principle that I talked about in this particular stream. And then here's another good thing. I know a lot of you guys are doing the 2,500 drawing challenge that Jordan McCracken Foster started in the Discord. Tell me in the chat if you're doing it. I think there's a couple hardcore 2,500 people in here right now. I know some people have hit like 200-300, but this is great practice. The 2,500, you do certain number of heads, hands, legs, and feet and everything. So heads are a part of this if you guys want to get that practice in. Art Prof has a podcast. It's available on Spotify and also on iTunes. Please leave us a rating and a review. Join us on Discord. I will be over there in a few minutes in the post live streams channel. Michelle is asking, how do I join this? Michelle, you want to go down to the video description below and find the invite link, and you can join us in the Discord. And by the way, subscribe to our channel and join the Art Prof family. And thank you so much to our top Patreon supporters who keep Art Prof up and running. Thank you to everybody for all your comments, your anatomical ones and your sassier ones as well. Everybody, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.